So today I'll be looking at the responses to my audience survey and analyzing them. So my first question was just, what is your name? I got 25 responses to the survey in total, and this was just to make sure that it was the people that I asked to do it that were doing it. And the second question was, how old are you? As you can see, 100% of the answers were 10 to 18. And so unfortunately, all my friends are in this age range, and anyone older, well, I waited a day for them to respond, and anyone older, I guess, was too busy to respond. And so I will try and get some older people to fill out the survey later on and update this, but for now, this is what I have. So the third question was, what fashion magazine brands are you aware of? As you can see, they're all kind of aware of the most typical famous magazine brands. So this is quite a predictable answer. But what is interesting is that the magazine brands that they know the most are the ones with big YouTube channels. So for example, Vogue, Cosmopolitan, GQ, Vanity Fair, they all have YouTube channels that I personally know and I personally watch quite often. So that is quite interesting, the effect that social media has, especially on my age group. So the fourth question was, what are some fashion magazines that you have bought or owned? And a smaller percentage have bought magazines than a percentage of people that know of the magazines, which is quite expected. But then aside from that, these percentages correlate quite well with the answers above. So the curve looks about the same. But if we add up these answers at the bottom, which all just mean no, that adds up to 32%. So a considerable amount of people have never bought or owned a fashion magazine. And so the fifth question was, how often would you buy magazines? So 0 people answered that they would buy a magazine every week, and not many people answered that they would buy every month. And so the most common answer was every few months to once a year. And then the rest were less than once a year to never, so can be assumed basically never. The sixth question was, how much do you usually spend on a magazine? So most people who've bought a magazine spend less than 100 Hong Kong dollars for a magazine. Seems pretty standard. Some people are paying a bit more. 5 people in total. But this could be for a special edition. So it seems that the standard is around 100 Hong Kong dollars or slightly below it. The next question was, where do you usually see magazines? And convenience stores seem to be the prime place to find magazines, or where people see magazines, come into contact with them. And social media was more effective than I expected, because you have to specifically choose what you want to follow, and maybe people that aren't interested wouldn't come across it that often. But I guess this can be attributed to the YouTube channels as well, as part of this statistic, because you can stumble across those videos while just browsing. Libraries and home seem pretty typical. Libraries usually have a big rack full of magazines, which are quite hard to miss. And then at home, it's possible that your relatives have them, like your mom or your dad buys them, or at work with your colleagues. Advertisements were actually less effective than I expected, because in Hong Kong we have a lot of huge billboards advertising magazines or fashion brands linked to magazines, and this was a surprising number. as well as bookshops was surprisingly low because bookshops, similar to libraries, have that big rack of magazines, usually quite near the entrance, and it's quite hard to miss. The next question was, which of the following color palettes appeals to you the most? It was a tie for first between palettes 1, 6, and 8, which are the most favored. So 1 was very bright summer colors, so red, orange, yellow, pink, somewhere in between. 6 was very blue and gray themed, sort of like some issues of GQ, that's what it reminded me of. And palette 8 was pastel colors, so which seems to be very popular in general as an aesthetic. And then 2 is a close second, which was autumn hues. Sort of that's what those colors reminded me of, and so I will keep this in mind when designing my magazine. As well as that, going back to the magazine brands that they are aware of, I assume that these popularities correlate to how much people like the design. So I will be trying to base my designs off the more preferred or well-known magazines. And the final question was, what topics would interest you in a fashion magazine? And this was to get ideas of what to write my articles on within my magazine. And not surprisingly, outfits was the most popular answer, because, well, it's a fashion magazine and the outfit is kind of makes fashion. And this is followed by interviews, which is a very popular idea for GCSE magazine making, and I think would work very well. And then life hacks, which I think would be a very cool article to make. And then teen fashion and accessories follow. Accessories, I think, would probably be quite a good article to make as well. And teen fashion, I don't know about this because since everyone that answered my survey was a teen, this is probably quite biased. But I feel like these have all given me, this has given me a very good indication of what people want and sort of inspiration for magazine articles.